podcast about the game of life and the hero's journey we all experience. Let's jump in with our host, Dylan Watkins, as he introduces today's guest.
Welcome, young adventurers. Dylan here. And on today's podcast, I interview Sarah Hill. She is the CEO of Helium, a mental fitness application that uses augmented and virtual reality and devices to power your mental fitness. And I'm so excited to talk to her today, and I'll be bringing her in right about now.
Hello. How you doing, Dylan? Good to see you.
Good to see you too, Sarah. How are you doing today?
Doing excellent here in the Silicon Prairie where the snow is falling.
Oh, wow. Snow is a wonderful and beautiful thing. I got to go up to Big Bear this weekend and trek through the snow waist deep. By the way, when they say chains are recommended, I highly recommend you bring them. Otherwise, you'll get a really good workout.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're all about four-wheel drive here in the Midwest. So, yeah.
I love it. I love it. So yeah, I'd love to talk to you about what you do. I think it's super cool. You have an application that does virtual reality and augmented reality for mental fitness. And I would love to hear a little bit about your journey of what got you to actually start this application.
Yeah, I was a television journalist for decades, about 25 years, and covered a lot of the negativity in the world, right? As a newscaster, you have to cover trauma, homicides, rapes, murders. We went in with the trauma teams in the aftermath of the tsunami in Sri Lanka and Indonesia. And ultimately that media diet that I had consumed, not only in television, but also in social media feeds, ultimately made me sick. So I developed Helium for me, as well as the hundreds of thousands of people who struggle with anxiety and are looking for some positive fiber, some escape from their current reality, and a drugless, non-harmful coping mechanism that allows them to improve their mental fitness.
That's awesome. So when you're talking about you created it for yourself, was this something that you did pen and paper to start with? How did this evolve from, out of your head into some sort of physical things and ultimately into the technology?
Yeah, so we were working with a group of veterans, terminally ill and aging World War II veterans. You might be familiar with the Honor Flight program. It's a nonprofit, and they have hubs all around the nation that take veterans on free physical flights to see their memorials. They fly them to Washington, D.C., and they're escorted, and they see the memorials in person. But an issue with that program is some of these, not an issue with the program, but an issue of the current reality is that, some of these men and women are 80 and 90 years old, and due to the pandemic, they're not able to travel, or due to their own physical health, they're not able to travel. Their bodies are too frail. And so they're not able to get on an airplane to go. So this was nearly 10 years ago. And we were using our mobile devices to live stream tours back to veterans in their veterans' homes. Just with, an iPhone or an Android, you could be at the World War II Memorial, and they could see what we were seeing. We eventually started using Google Glass, which is an augmented reality device. You remember back in the day, and we would live stream it from our face. But there was a problem with that, and that was the fact that you needed to have a volunteer at all times to be the arms and legs of that veteran in order to allow them to virtually visit their memorials. And Google eventually pulled the Hangouts on Air program that was allowing us to stream these tours back to these veterans. So we needed an alternative. And that alternative, even though we started in augmented reality, was virtual reality. So through virtual reality cameras, we captured the World War II memorial, that we then did films about the Vietnam Memorial, the Women's Memorial next, Arlington National Cemetery. We did films out on the USS Nimitz out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And to make a long story short, through this volunteer program that we were doing, we noticed that VR was affecting the user's physiology. They just weren't watching these experiences, they were feeling them. They would take off the headset and they would make comments like, I like how I felt in that experience. Can I watch it again? And so journalists, naturally curious person, wondering what is it about this kind of media that appears to be, impacting their physiology in a positive way, and downshifting their nervous system, almost as if you put them in a warm bath or some kind of relaxing environment. So we started to study how does virtual and augmented reality environments impact brain patterns, heart rate, mood, all of that. And, after a couple of years of research, we developed a product. And that product is called Helium. In 4 peer-reviewed journals, it's been shown to quickly reduce anxiety, improve mood in as little as 4 minutes. And these are not only beautiful nature-based escapes, but also using as inputs the data that comes from your wearables. And I can share more about that. So that's a very long soliloquy as an answer to your question on how did this evolve to you? But it came with a genuine desire to help a group of people who weren't able to physically travel to some of the places where they wanted to go. That's how Helium was born.
That's super awesome. Yeah, the being in VR and those types of things, I mean, one of the powers of that is you can be anywhere, any place, anytime with anyone, and there's so much value in creating something for literally the U.S. heroes, right? People that have actually, sacrificed to be a part of that. And so it's awesome to see how you first go to try to solve something for a small group of people, but you realize that, trauma is a human condition. We've all experienced it, right? And but first starting with the very painful and expanding outwards is such a beautiful thing. When you're talking about this wearables, I mean, are you talking about, like, how are you measuring that? Are you talking about the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, or like HRVs, or what are the wearables that you're actually using to measure this type of emotional change?
Right now we have 2 compatible wearables, and those wearables are a BrainLink Lite EEG headband. It's just a headband that's worn on the forehead, just like that, right? And it has sensors on it that are capturing the electricity that comes out of your forehead. Those are brain patterns, and you actually have the ability to shift your brain patterns by what you think about and emotion recall. And then we're also using an Apple Watch, smartwatches. Ultimately, anything that captures your body's electricity can be used to power Helium. And it's a unique way to interact with the data from your wearables. Instead of just tracking it on a flat 2D data dashboard, you're actually developing a relationship with it. You're almost as if you're telling a story with it. You can illuminate a solar system by lowering your heart rate. You can float up the side of a beautiful waterfall in virtual reality by quieting your mind. You can make the rain go inside a jungle and see a glowing light move towards you just by your feelings of focused calm. So it's really using your own emotion recall and your own memories. That's the fuel that powers Helium. It's not necessarily the wearable that's powering it. It's you and your own healing powers that you have inside yourself. And we like to call it a self-awareness tool that allows you to become more self-aware that what you think about absolutely impacts your brain patterns. It impacts your heart rate. It impacts your mood and your anxiety levels. And when you lower that stress, that's a powerful tool for your own human performance. You perform better when your mental fitness is better, when your stress is reduced, because you reduce stress, you increase working memory, which reduces the likelihood of errors, and all of those positive benefits with productivity. So really what Helium is a human performance tool that's powered by your body's electricity as captured via wearables. And we're constantly adding wearables to the platform. Like I said, we have 2 right now, and have plans to add more this year.
Well, yeah, that Apple Watch, I mean, it's so powerful for being able to grab your data and feedback and be able to, fill it back to you. I have things where I had an application where I stepped on a scale and it tracks my body weight, so I can't escape the fact that I had Cheetos late at night. And then you go off and it be able to pull that input. So that having it linked up to an Apple Watch is such a powerful, because it's so ubiquitous. It's so common to have that plugged on you. That I think it's a fantastic tool. What I love about what you're describing at this is there's unconscious feedback loop patterns that you have, right? So the unconscious feedback loop is I feel bad, so I do bad, so I feel better, I do better, and all those things, grammar aside, is you're looking at what you're breaking the unconscious feedback loop to the forefront and allowing them to see that. And one thing I'd be really curious about these patterns is, have you noticed anything around they're playing the game of mental fitness, right? They're going through and they're mentally imagining, make it rain more, or go up a waterfall, or any of those types of things where you're in this mental space where you want to achieve a certain goal, which the irony is to not have a goal and to relax. But then have you seen a thing where because they become aware of the rain, they then slip back out of that? And then are they reconditioning themselves to not be affected by these desires or goals or things? So I'm just wondering how the effects of the actual interactions affect the actual goals of what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. You see responses in all kinds of ways. So what you're describing is ruminating thoughts, right? Kind of like those thoughts that, as you said, when you're eating Cheetos late at night, you're lying in bed thinking about all the things that I need to do, and your mind just will not shut up. And so, as you're using the experience, that's why it's called training, right? That it's not just quiet, melodic, experiences. You will find some music on there that is upbeat, and some images that aren't necessarily meant to lull you to sleep. That it's a training tool, and you're actually challenged in order to try to keep your mind calm and try to keep your mind focused while doing these experiences. So it really depends on the individual. Everybody's brain is different. And that's why there are difficulty levels within the app. Much as you would lift weights or get on a stationary bike and you could shift gears to go to different levels, we encourage people to start on the very easiest level with Helium, because if you've never powered anything with your brain patterns before, it can be awkward, right? Do you remember the first time you rode a bike? Right? You had to create that muscle memory. Your brain is the same way, and ultimately, it is a self-awareness tool, and it's like you are playing a game where your goal is to make this firefly go up. And if you have those feelings of focus, calm, you can toggle it easy, medium, or hard, depending on how you want to train. Or you can toggle it off altogether so you get no feedback and the experience automatically plays. And that's how it works without a wearable as well. But if your mind is focused and calm, then that firefly will go up. And that's the feedback that you get to know, okay, am I doing it right? And then the negative feedback, which negative feedback is how we learn. The background will either turn red, the flowers will stop growing, the solar system darkens as that gentle reminder to you that you need to either shift or recall something that could move it, that firefly, and make it go up. So yeah, it's like a muscle that you train. And it's not really, it's a different flavor. We use meditation in quotes. Some people call it neuro meditation. Our co-founder, Dr. Tarrant, calls it neuro meditation, where you're using different brain patterns and different kinds of meditation. And not all meditations are the same. Not all meditations are just for your calm. They're also for your focus, for your mindfulness, open heart, or what's called positivity as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'd love to learn a little bit more about, you talked about you toggle it on or off if you don't have a device. But, so much about games is feedback. So much of a game is understanding where am I at and then where do I want to go. And so I'd love to learn a little bit about your path to mastery, right? How do people get started? You talked about toggling easy, medium, hard, but is there a path to mastery, how they can tell, oh, this is where I'm starting, and how do they tell that I've mastered the game of internal awareness and reflection? Is there a way for them to know that and be able to tell? I know it's very, especially without a device, very difficult to tell. But with these devices, whether the Apple or the EEG, it do you have a path to mastery that kind of shows them from a bird's eye view where they are and how they get there?
So Helium is like a feeling mirror, in a way. And ultimate mastery, that comes within yourself, right? Not necessarily a device that will tell you whether or not you're doing it right. Some people have a very well-established mind-body connection, and that they know that they're doing it right. And then there are the rest of us that need some training tools. And so Helium comes with a data dashboard that allows the user to track their progress over time. So they get a Helium score, and Helium score is really like stress resilience. It's measuring your focused calm, and you have the ability to track that score over time. When you come into the experience, you get a score, and then after you're finished with the experience, you get a score, and it asks you whether or not you want to save that data. Then our subscribers can log into a data dashboard. They can see their own individual brain patterns tracked over time. Obviously, it's not a diagnostic tool. It's not going to tell you you're positive, you're a negative person, or you're depressed, or you have anxiety. It's not a medical diagnostic tool meant to be used inside hospitals with patients. It's used with not only youth and young adults, but corporate wellness programs, athletes, esports athletes, doing a lot with esports, because mental fitness is very important how they perform. Helium is also recently been deployed to the front lines for nurses for compassion fatigue. And nurses are worker athletes. They are absolutely, experiencing a large amount of stress, and yet they have to persevere. So, just as you have to train your body, it is training your mind to become more resilient and to learn to self-regulate, so that when you don't have an EEG headband, you don't have a brain link, or you don't have an Apple Watch or a smartwatch to see what your heart rate is doing, you can imagine some of those scenes and some of those memories that you needed to recall in order to downshift your nervous system.
That's awesome.
Or focus your nervous system, depending on how you want to train.
Yeah, with that, I would love to hear a little bit more about, because the esports and the whole mindfulness area is relatively new, bringing that in, but they are the new type of athlete, these esports gamers, and then it is a highly competitive area where it does create a lot of stress. And I'd love to see that. Well, what is the adoption been like for esports gamers? How have they leveraged it? Do you know anything about that? Do they put it on before the game? When they freak out and they have a loss, do they go off to the side and try it a bit? Like, how do they leverage Helium in terms of esports?
Yeah, Helium right now is designed to be used before and after the games. So, obviously not during the games, but it's being called a digiceutical for tilting. So if you're familiar, with that.
Can you say it again? A what?
A digiceutical for tilting.
Okay, I know tilting. What's a digiceutical? I'm going to butcher that word. Don't ask me to spell it. What is that?
Yeah, digiceuticals. These are VR-ceuticals or AR-ceuticals, much like pharmaceuticals. These are drugless, non-harmful coping mechanisms. It's using digital media as a drug of sorts. A layer underneath digital therapeutics that are meant to diagnose or treat conditions, digiceuticals are self-awareness tools, wellness apps that allow you to become more self-aware of those emotions and also train. So when we say tilting, some of the people who are listening here might not be familiar with that term, but that is a gaming term, for obviously crashing and burning and losing it. So how do you improve your performance? Well, you improve your performance by reducing that mental fatigue, and you reduce stress, you increase the working memory, which reduces the likelihood of errors. And so, mental fitness is so important, not just in esports, but all sports is ultimately a mental game. So we are really excited to be working with several teams. I can't tell you the names of them other than they're in Washington, London, and Vancouver is the other one, and also esports enthusiasts as well. So stress is a $300 billion profit and people killer. It specifically in the wake of COVID right now, this is a mental health emergency. So stress management really covers a variety of different personas, not only from esports, but from youth and young adults who are among the most stressed populations in the world, to athletes, to worker athletes like nurses. So a really important area right now as it relates to everything that we're experiencing in the greater pandemic, with the uncertainty, people working from home, they're homeschooling their children. Obviously it needs no explanation that this is the stress Olympics right now, and not everyone has trained for it.
Yeah. And have you seen, in terms of because you're right, the stress is a human problem, and especially with the pandemic, we are social creatures, and we got thrown into a whole antisocial area, right, in that era of time. So, how have you seen people adapting to using Helium in the pandemic or post-pandemic era? How they've been using it and leveraging it in terms of, because you're right, they have been training, but guess what? The Olympics are here and it's time to go. So have there been, has your business been affected by the pandemic in a way, shape, and form because of this? And then how have you responded to actually help facilitate any type of mental change because of it?
Yeah, the pandemic is, sadly a growth area for us. So, not only growth in the area of Helium use and sales, but because people are sequestered in their homes and don't have the ability to escape, Helium is a walk in the park for those times when those individuals can't take a physical walk in the park. And so these virtual vacations that we've been doing for, nearly a decade, with veterans and other individuals are suddenly, have a light shown on them in their utility, because people don't have the ability to physically travel. Great example. There are more than 130 honor flight hubs around the nation that do really important work as a nonprofit in order to fly veterans on free flights to see their memorials. But they, like a lot of other nonprofits out there, they're not able to fly, or much less take an 80 or 90-year-old, veteran who might already be frail to see their memorials. So, these are some affordable solutions that obviously seeing the World War II memorial in VR goggles is not nearly as memorable, as important, as inspiring or impactful as seeing it on a real honor flight. That's like the best way to see it, right? With other people that you served with. But in this pandemic, it's what we have. It's a tool that we can use. And also too, I think a tool that even after the pandemic has passed, that we'll be able to provide to people who don't have mobility. They might be in hospice, or they might be a youth and young adult who has mobility, but for whatever reason prefers to be in that safety of the comfort of their own home, but yet feel like they're someplace else virtually.
Mm-hmm. How do you use Helium? What's your process for using it for yourself?
Yeah, so I started using neurofeedback and biofeedback for my sleep. Ultimately, that was a downfall for me. I had those ruminating thoughts at night before you go to bed. And ultimately, after years of that, that's what made me sick. If your nervous system is not properly getting the ability to downshift at night, or even downshift during the day, it will short circuit. And that's, what happened with myself. So I use Helium for sleep. In order to quiet those ruminating thoughts. I can be in a magic snow globe. I can, float through a nebula in space. I can float up the side of a beautiful waterfall, be in a beach, in a grove of sunflowers. And to me, it's almost like bedtime stories, for adults. That's putting in beautiful, picturesque images in your mind before you go to sleep. Some people have a CPAP machine on their bedside. I've got virtual reality goggles. And it's almost like it is a portable digital chill pill that can be, a part of your bedtime routine. Other people use it to escape stressful situations, like a painful procedure like chemotherapy or suture removal, or before you go into an MRI, or your child has had a bad day, you're going through a divorce, you just lost a parent. I mean, there are so many ways that Helium is used because stress management is such a huge problem.
Have you seen your dreams change at all by going through Helium? Has there been a pattern of has there been an affecting, because you're really setting the subconscious before you go to bed, and you're talking about downshifting your nervous system. Has there been a change in dreams or patterns that you've seen?
I would not say a change in dreams. Lucid dreaming is a big topic that I am highly interested in, but I would not say that I've noticed a change in my dreams. A change in my ability to self-regulate and also to downshift my nervous system, yes. And a change in my ability to do that without a headband, yes, because I have unique memories, because I've used Helium and mental training, that are burned into my brain, that I know exactly what I need to think about in order to downshift my nervous system, increase my focused calm.
Mm-hmm. And right now, when you're talking about the VR goggles, are you talking about, because are you primarily available on the Quest, but are you on Vive as well, or what platforms of VR are you on?
So we're hardware agnostic. We like all of the headsets. So we're on Oculus Quest, Quest 2, Pico Goblin. You can also download us from the Pico Goblin store. And then in the next few weeks, we'll be on Vive and Steam as well. So, any place that has a headset has the ability to get Helium. Just search for us, HEALIUM, in your virtual reality store, or also on iOS and Android with your iPhone or your Android. If you don't have virtual reality goggles, that's not a barrier to entry. You can use our augmented reality products, which just take the assets and put them on your mobile device inside your living room. And then you can move your phone around to see some of those different assets. So you can search for Helium on the iOS and Android app stores.
Nice. Now, with that, I know that I think Vive has been looking at getting into plugging in brain interfaces with there. I forget what it was like. I think they're working with the Open something. I can't remember what it was.
Open BCI, maybe.
Open BCI.
I'm not sure, but I think that's what you're referencing.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's what it was. I was thinking of Open Waters, but no, you're right. It's Open BCA, which is the brain control interface. And so, are you looking to integrate with those brain control interfaces and making it one holistic unit? Because I know right now you're talking about the different devices that are out there, but do you have any future plans to port to that type of stuff?
So we're a content company, not a hardware company. So other people build the hardware, and we build the experiences and the content that's controlled by your biometric information. So no, we do not have plans to create any kind of hardware device or virtual reality headset or even
No,
EEG headband. We work with
that's
existing.
that's not what I meant. So I apologize if that's how it came across. What I'm saying is, in terms of that, they have their unique hardware that you're not going to build. But are you planning on using a holistic device approach, where instead of it just being the watch or the headband, doing developments with that hardware company, the Vive, with the Open BCI stuff, and be able to actually take all of that to make it one holistic system? That was more of the question, not necessarily hardware.
Yeah, specifically, I'd have to see the system, what it's like, to know whether or not that our Voodoo would work with their Voodoo on the back end. But ultimately, we're hardware and wearable agnostic. So it doesn't matter, what kind of hardware you use. It's bring your own wearable and use it to power Helium.
BYOH. Gotcha. Yes. So with that, I mean, ultimately with your company, like where you're going with Helium, what do you want to, grand vision with Helium? What do you want Helium to become ultimately?
We want people to discover the healing powers inside themselves, one immersive journey at a time. And we want this to be a way for people to realize that their thoughts do have power to control things, not only in the virtual world, but the real world as well.
It truly has an effect. I mean, we know this, that energy, communication, things like that. You can say something and say the same thing with complete different energy and intent, and it comes across very, very, very differently. So that it's just a bit intangible, but you can feel it, which is an incredible thing. What have you faced in terms of your own personal challenges to bring this company to life, in building the company, building augmented reality and virtual reality and mindfulness and all the things that you've done? You've been on a road and a journey to come up here. What have been some threshold guardians that you've had to do battle with to bring this company into existence?
Primarily education. That's our, the greatest barrier to entry, is that people aren't accustomed yet to using their brain patterns or their heart rate as power sources for media, right? It's a different concept. They're used to tracking the data with their wearables. They're not used to using themselves as like a source of power and internal power and training and working those internal muscles. But I think in the coming months and years, we'll be hearing a lot more about that as meditation, flips a coin from being a primarily something that's passive, that you imagine by closing your eyes, to being something that is open-eyed, visual, that you're actually powering with data, biometric data that comes from that. So education, number one. Number two, obviously, it takes a certain amount of digital literacy in order to use virtual and augmented reality, right? And for virtual reality, it requires hardware. Now, we've solved for that with having an augmented reality product that you can use just with your mobile device. But obviously, not everyone has a virtual reality headset, but the form factor of those headsets are getting lighter. And then, with Helium's AR product, you don't need a headset at all. As well, operating in the Midwest, in the Silicon Prairie, we had to build our company on revenue because there wasn't access to venture capital. And at the time, that was really hard to do when our friends and neighbors are raising millions of dollars, from investment banks. We were out there doing anything that we could in order to get customers in the door that would allow us to finance our product development. And ultimately, it turned out to be a great way to finance the company, because you developed relationships along the ways of those customers that then became customers for Helium product. But there are, you could do a whole podcast on that, on what are some of the challenges that entrepreneurs face But specifically here in our neck of the woods in the Midwest, you face an uphill battle. There are no VC funds in our community, in our Columbia, Missouri. There are angel groups and smaller groups that support this, but historically, companies from our parts don't raise large investment rounds or even more than one round. It's you raise a pre-seed and then you're done. But what you're finding is really fascinating, how not only are companies from the East and West Coast coming to the Silicon Prairie, the Kansas Cities, the Austins, because they're seeing how these companies build their products on revenue and they're capital efficient. And so you'll hear more and more hero stories about entrepreneur companies coming from the center of the United States, because you have the ability to do it cheaper, better, faster. Costs of goods are lower here. Cost of talent is lower. And you also have the ability to quickly iterate, because these companies are not massive in size, that they can pivot and iterate on a dime.
Yeah, and it's also a bit of a false holy grail, in a sense of a lot of people in Silicon Valley, or wherever you want to call it, they're like, if I just got that investor, if I just got that $1 million, then I would be set. And then it's like, once they get that, oh great, well, what's my goal? Build a highly profitable business. And like, oh, well, if only I would have started building a highly profitable business out the gate, you wouldn't need to be beholden to investors and invest and all the other things that sometimes you can spend. It's like a full business trying to raise capital and do all that fun stuff, versus cutting that middleman out and just building a profitable business, which is the point of all the venture capital and things. And so, I mean, I think it's great that you've been able to actually build that without capital, because it's not, it's to me, it's more of a distraction, versus you're focusing on solving problems and adding value to the ecosystem that you serve. So I think that's great.
Well, thank you, but it's not to say I have done this without capital. We have received angel investment, and that investment is important in order to be able to scale faster, and also to finance product development and securing IP, all of those things that tech companies need. So I'm not saying I bootstrapped the whole thing. We absolutely got investment, but we didn't get it at a level
So then you're saying that what you got was, like, at what point did you need to take on investment? Was that the ideation stage, to go from ideation to software, or was that from software to scale? At what point did you need that angel investment? How much of traction did you need to have to really make that happen?
So we bootstrapped the company, and I think we were probably at about $500,000 in revenue before we took on our first angel investment. And that angel investment was for that research to know, do these products have an impact on physiology? Can they be created in a way that has an even greater impact? And so that was the funds, the first investment that came in, not only for the research, but also for the product development, in order to build that first beta prototype, where, looking back now, was very, very clunky with, 2 red and blue lines, stop and start button, and that was pretty much it. But that was enough in order to educate people about what we were building and how we wanted to unlock a new layer of mental fitness and human performance.
Yeah, there's always that ugly baby time where you gotta right. Like, okay, here's my ugly baby. Yes. I know it's ugly, but please love it. I love it, and that's a really hard thing to get through, because a lot of people spin things up where they'll never show off the ugly baby to get to the the more attractive phases down the line of where the product life cycle is going. When you're talking about the bringing on these investments and things like this, like, I have 2 questions, but let me start with the first one. Is with that, how did you choose your investors? Were they culture alignments? Were they fiscally focused? Or what about you? How did you make your decisions around choosing what investors to bring on?
Yeah, our first investors were not necessarily fiscally focused, but definitely mission oriented, and we were aligned, which then pays dividends as it relates to a fiscal focus. So these were a group of individuals who tried our ugly baby that was crawling around with the wrong shoes on its foot, and overlooked all of its flaws and said, I get where you're going. I can overlook that the onboarding is, it was clunky, and that, connection issues. But I see where the confluence of wearables, the opioid epidemic, where people are looking for drugless solutions, the greater pandemic, where people are sequestered in their homes and they're needing to escape their current reality, also the rise of 5G and the enablement of more real-time data capture. I get, Sarah, how all of those are leading in a direction that would allow for a new kind of media channel to come in that allows you to power it with your body's electricity. And ultimately that's all investment is believing in the idea, and trying to equip the team that can take that ball and execute on it. And that's one of the things with not just myself, but we have a phenomenal team of ladies here in Columbia, Missouri, that execute every single day with limited resources, and have surpassed some of the companies even that received tens of millions in investment.
Are you primarily a female majority company, or is that a focus of yours, or is that a strategy or a purpose, or what? Can you say a little bit more about that?
We're a women-owned certified small business. So yes, I'm the female founder, the CEO, and the majority of people who work at Helium are female.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. So with that, how have you noticed? How is the culture different, being primarily female and things like that? What about that? Do you feel lends itself to being a competitive advantage? And what insights have you gone from actually starting? Because that's a very unique to be in this deep of a tech space, being female run, majority female run. I'd be very curious about the culture behind that, and just the how it's been for you.
Yeah, there are a lot of great companies in the XR space that are women-led. So it's great that we're not as much of a minority as we were. But I certainly appreciate your question, and I'm glad that you asked it. And I guess it's, I don't know, just being in the battlefield of that. It's hard for me to articulate what it's like, because I've never built a company as a man in the tech space.
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't know anything different. We're just people building a product, and trying to do the best that we can. And we've been helped not only by a lot of phenomenal women, but amazing men who have recognized that they have influence that can help us as well, and using their influence in order to open up doors for us. So when you're building a company, we're not just building it with women. We're building it with men, and people on all gender spectrums.
Sure. Yeah. And I was super curious when you said that. I was like, wow, like, I'm a part of, of course, I'm a guy, white male, tech company, things like that. I was like, wow, what would it be like to be a part of an all female? I'm like, that's got to be a whole different.
Visit us. You should.
I want to.
In the Silicon Valley.
I want to.
And yeah, we have a great time here building products, and they're playing Beat Saber out in the lobby, just like you would at any other tech company.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you think of in terms of culture? I mean, do you have conscious rituals that you do, especially what you do in a lot of things? I'm very much interested in cultural dynamics and ways to be able to build, because you spend most of your time, especially being a startup, and this as a CEO, you spend a majority of your time with the people that you work with, right? And so how do you look at culture, and do you have rituals and systems and ways to kind of have that cultural check-in? I'd be really curious on that point, especially with the mindfulness side of things, of how do you operate on a day-to-day basis considering culture?
Yeah, and culture for any young company is always a growth area, right? That's always
Mm,
something that we want to improve. But we have a variety of rituals. One of my favorite ones is that we stand on the couch a lot. So we have a couch in our office that's followed us from our many moves over the last few years. And it's a couch where we celebrate the no's as well as the yeses. So anytime we get, feedback, whether that be from a grant that we applied for that we didn't get, or a customer churns, or you didn't get investment, or all of the whole ebbs and flows that a founder experiences. And these letters that you get, it's like
yeah.
you've gotten so many no letters that from reading the first few words whether or not it's a no or a yes. And in
Yeah.
order, for myself, and I hope it helps our employees as well, but we had to develop some of these tools to get us through all of the slew and onslaught of no's that you get as a founder of a tech company in the Midwest, right?
Yeah.
So these are little tactics that have helpful for me to keep going, and that we can stand on the couch and read that letter that we got from company X that says, you did not receive this particular grant or this particular contract or whatever. And it also teaches us to be resilient mentally, and the fact that those no's are data, and we should absolutely celebrate them. We should take them, wipe them all over our body like mud and stinky fertilizer that will help us grow and then help us get to those yeses. And so, as entrepreneurs, we are in the mud a lot, the mud of uncertainty, in which way we go, product market fit, who's your customer, where is who's your end user, who's paying for that, all of this ambiguity of a young company's life. And people who are working at those companies, the leadership and the employees, it's like dog years, it ages them. So if you don't have some kind of coping mechanisms in place where you try to normalize all of that onslaught of no that you're going to get, you're not going to be able to get as many yeses, because you're not going to have the self-confidence in yourself. And so that's, one of the things that we try to grow here is that it doesn't, and the XR industry is so new. People don't have, years and years of experience. I didn't have years and years of experience, before I founded the virtual and augmented reality company. And so we've really tried to instill a sense of, you don't have that expertise in that particular skill set. Lucky you. We get to learn it. And then sometimes, what we're finding is that, people do it better when they don't have that institutional knowledge, when they're just on the front lines and doing it. And, a lot of our employees and leaderships are wearing not one hats, but 3 or 4 hats. And, it really takes a unique kind of individual to work at a young company or at a startup who has the ability to do this all day long, get told, no. And so from a culture perspective, we're still learning, what is the best formula for that. But one of the things that works for us is standing on the couch.
Yeah. I just pictured walking past your office and just seeing women on a couch rubbing these no letters, jumping up and down. It's a very fun image, but I love that you have a cathartic process for dealing with the emotional roller coaster, because it's a very kinesthetic, jumping up and down, letting it go, Tom cruising on the couch, just letting it all go out. It's a very I think it's a very powerful lesson for anybody that's going into that, is that your ability to handle rejection and process it and not repress it, not hide it, not that, but celebrate it, is something that's gonna allow you to endure. And because it's a game of endurance and embracing and all of that, all of the times, because it's a roller coaster going through the startup land. And I love that ritual. With that, what advice would you give if there was a young female, young male, somebody who wanted to get into the space, that were looking to start this up? What were some lessons that you wish you knew going into this?
No's are data, and don't let them discourage you. And your family is your first co-founders for your company. And so you really have to make sure that they're on board with what you're doing before you do it, because they are really going to be the ones who have to sacrifice the time, and be okay with going on a trip, and you have to spend part of it on your laptop. So really make sure that your partner is on board with that, because they're absolutely a founder. Maybe not on the paperwork, but they are a founder in real life. And two, find a place to place your hope. Whatever your faith is, if you worship the light, if you worship nature, if you worship a God, whatever you do, find some place to place your hope, and then rely on that faith, because you are going to need it as you go in that up and down journey. Wow.
Yeah, for sure. You need that when all seems lost, to be able to say, you know what, I'm holding on to this light. It's just, it might be small, but I've got it, and you just hold on to that thing, because it'll bring you through. I think that's beautiful, Sarah.
Yeah, trust the process. Trust the process.
Process. I love it. So as we start to wrap this up here, is there any last messages you would like to share with the listeners before you let people know how to get a hold of you?
Yeah, we are losing our World War II veterans at a rate of hundreds a day nationwide. And sadly, most of them will not live long enough in order to see their memorials. So if you have a heart for helping any of those aging veterans, I'd encourage you to support your local Honor Flight Hub. You can find your local Honor Flight Hub by going to honorflight.org and then just clicking on your particular state. This organization is doing amazing work, even in the pandemic, in order to ensure that after all of this lifts, those veterans can see their memorials. If you have an Oculus Go headset, those veterans could be using that headset in order to see their memorials. So certainly, if you would like to donate it, get in touch with me. I'd be happy to put it in a good location inside a veteran's home. And two, remember, as an entrepreneur, if there are some entrepreneurs listening to this podcast, focus on what you can control. Things that you cannot control are just wasted energy. So whenever you start to worry, just think about whether it's worthy of your worry and those ruminating thoughts. And because if you don't have the ability to control it, chances are you shouldn't be worrying about it.
Yeah, the worthy of worrying. That's a great concept right there. Worthy of worrying is a very powerful concept I haven't put a lot of thought into. And also, I'd love to see if anybody does send over the Oculus Go's over to you. I'd love to see those reaction videos of people putting on the headsets for the first time and experiencing that. That's I'm sure that's very emotionally moving. So that's
It's neat to see. We did a virtual tour for a veteran in a rural town. Mr. Sinclair is 92 years old. He will likely never get the opportunity to see his memorial, but he saw it that day. They had a parade outside his house, and his wife said it was the best day that he's had all year. So even just those goggles that you have sitting collecting dust, even if you're not able to donate it, share them. Honor Everywhere is a free app. You can download it on Oculus. We love a review, but share it with an aging veteran who doesn't have the ability to see their memorial.
That's beautiful. And if people wanted to find out more about what you do, to get a hold of you, to find more about Helium, how would they get a hold of you?
Go to tryhelium.com, and helium is spelled like healing. So TRYHEALIUM. You're also happy to email me. It's Sarah with an H at tryhelium.com.
Beautiful. Sarah, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
I love all that you do. And I look forward to going deep in the Helium app. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. Bye now.
Thank you for listening to the Heroes of Reality podcast. Check out heroesofreality.com for more episodes. While you're there, you can also take the Heroes Quiz to find out what kind of hero you are. Or, if you have a great story and want to be on the podcast, tell us why your hero's journey will inspire others.